Hello, everyone, and welcome to this deep anatomical tour in the nasal cavity and its surroundings. My name is Aritasa, and today I am going to explain the volume for the head and the neck. Then we have here the introduction part. The nasal cavity is like an essential structure of our respiratory system and one of the most important regions involved in the breathing. When we know and the air enters through the nose and passes through the nasal cavity before reaching like the deeper parts of the respiratory system, such as like the larynx, trachea, and also the lungs. This is important to explain because, however, the nasal cavity is more than just air passage. It's like play like an important role in filtering, warming, and also humidifying the air. But why this is important is because this allows to protect like the respiratory system and also the respiratory structures from the harmful particles and also the microorganisms that are in our environment or in our space. It is also closely related to the sense to smell, is immune defense, and also a voice resonance. For example, when we sing, when we talk in a speech or something like that, we need this part because we need to project our voice in this space. Then we have that the nasal cavity is like surrounded by the important structures, like such as the cranial bones that we can see in the image, the paranasal sinuses, and also the nasopharynx that work together like a structure to facilitate the breathing and protect the body, like I mentioned before. In this presentation, I am going to review like the anatomy, the basic anatomy, and also the nasal cavity and nervous structures. I am going to explain like the functions, the discuss, the common diseases that are related to this region and also in these structures. Okay, in this part we have the introduction to air and food passages. In the head and in the neck, in this part, there are shared like pathways from blood, air, and also food. But when we inhale, the air enters through the nose and also or the mouth and passes to the pharynx that is located in this part, which acts like a crossroads between the respiratory and the digestive system. But how it works? From there, we have that the pathways are separated. Yes, the first one is where the air moves toward the larynx, trachea, and lungs. That we can say that is the respiratory system. But the next one that is located in the right side is when the food moves toward the oropharynx and the esophagus, and also that carries the stomach or that move the food through the stomach. The nasal cavity is a like a street, like a false street, and is located in the first part of the respiratory system where the air is prepared to before reaching the lungs and be being clean, humidified, and also warm to allow the different functions and important functions in the systems, the different systems in our body, is like for maintain like a balance in the different processes that occurs or that uh, are located in our body. In this part, we have the introduction to the air and the four passages, but we can divide into. From there, the pathways are like like I mentioned before, that the air moves, like there is the respiratory one and the digestive. So in the respiratory, the most important thing is like the larynx, trachea, and lungs. This allows to maintain the homeostasis or the different processes that oxygen to share oxygen to our body, and also to allows the circulation of our blood in all of our body. Then we have in this part the bones of the nasal cavity. I tried to do a video of every important bone. So in this part, the nasal cavity is supported by several bones of a skull and facial skeleton that we can see in the images. The nasal bone is the first one located in the left side of the of the screen. That is from the like a bridge of the nose. Then we have the maxilla that forms like a part of lateral walls on also the floor of the nasal cavity, which also that we can see in the video corresponds to the roof of the oral cavity. Then we have the palatine that is located in this part of our mouth that contributes to the posterior part of the hard palatine and also of the floor of the nasal cavity. Then we have the ethmoids that is located in this part and it forms the part of the roof of the nasal cavity and the medial wall of the orbit. The orbits are these holes in our face and the part of the nasal septum that is located in this part that divide the nose. Then we have the boomer that forms the lower part of the nasal septum that is dividing the cavity into passages that we can see in this part, the last part of the um, front part of our face. The inferior nasal conchae are curved like bones that increases the surfaces area of the nasal cavity and also helps to regulate the airflow. Mm, then we have aquí here here the that around the nasal cavity. Um, we have the paranasal sinuses. These are like air-filled spaces that are located within the cerline skull bones and connected to the nasal cavity. There are like four types. So I try to draw in this video that we can see in the left part that say that the frontal sinuses are the first one located in the frontal bone that above the eyes that is in this part. Then we have the maxillary sinuses. The maxillar is this part, the maxilla, and is the largest part. Then we have the ethmoidal sinuses that in this part in the of the orbita, that are small air cells within the ethmoid bone. And also we have the last one that is the sphenoidal sinuses that are located in the deep side in the sphenoid bone. Then we have that these sinuses helps two different things. The first one is that reduce the skull weight, so it produces mucus, help to humidify the air, and contribute to the bioresonance also for zinc or the different actions that I mentioned before. Then we have that the apex points downward, forward, and toward the left, and that is why this is so important because are like a pneumatic bones that have a lot of air and resonance. And these have the ethmoid bone. This is the most important bone. So the ethmoid bone is one of the most important bones related to the nasal cavity. So it is located between the nasal cavity and the orbits. The nasal cavity is this one, and the orbital is this one. We can see in the draw that I made before in the left part of the screen. This is one of the case structures in the cribriform plate that is in the middle, which contains like small openings that allow that the fibers of the olfactory nerve pass through, and also that the nasal cavity to the brain, enabling the sense of smell. When we smell pizza, smell bread, or smell flowers, when we obviously with that we with um, our boyfriends, our boyfriend give off to us. Another structure is the Chrysagali. Um, this is important because it serves to do the attachment point of the part of the dura mater. And the ethmoid is also contained at the ethmoid labyrinth that forms the superior and middle nasal conchae that is important to the different movements of the air in our respiratory system. In this part, we have the openings of the nasal cavity. So this is important to note that the nasal cavity communicates with nervous structures through several openings. So the piriform upper two, that is the first one, is the anterior opening of the nasal cavity. That is located in this part. Is this like in this part of the nose? Then we have the and at the back are the conai, that in Spanish is are the coanas, which connect the nasal cavity of the nasopharynx that is located in this part, in the last part or in the back of the of this structure. Inside this cavity, the nasal conai create passages called like the nasal meatus that are the little spaces with green color in the middle in the image in the middle part of the screen. Inside the cavity, and in the superior meatus drains like the posterior ethmoidal sinuses, and in the middle and in the inferior meatus we have the drains frontal maxillar and also the anterior ethmoidal sinuses, and in the inferior it receives the nasolacrimal duct that is so important for cry a lot, cry a lot. So uh, each carries the tears from the eye to the nasal cavity, and this explains why the nose runs um, when a person cries. Yes, like when you have a lot of congestion in our nose when we cry because they are connected. In this part, the structures around the nasopharynx, I try to draw the most important. The nasopharynx is like in the upper part of the pharynx, located behind the nasal cavity. It is surrounded like by bones such as like the sphenoid, occipital, palatine, and also the maxilla that we can see in the video in the right side of the screen. An important feature or an important fact is the opening of the auditory system, that is the eustachian tube, which connect the nasopharynx with the middle ear, that helps to equalize the different pressures and also the different like noises or the different voices in our every day. Here we have like a little review of nasal and nasopharyngeal bones. So this is important to know that what are the bases of this part. So the first one are the nasal bones, maxilla, palatine bones, ethmoid bone, boomer, sphenoid, and also the occipital bone that are like the base of this part of the nasal part. So together they form the structure of that supports the airflow and also the drains and also the protection and the nervy organs. The nasal cavity lining is like the most important thing that we need to understand. The nasal cavity with have a like a respiratory mucosa that is composed of a pseudo-stratified ciliate columnar epithelium with globed cells. But what is this? So globed cells produce mucus that traps dust, bacteria, and viruses of our environment. The cilia move the mucus toward the pharynx, and so it can be like a swallowed and removed, and this process is known as mucociliar clearance, like as is an important process or mechanism of respiratory system because it allows to eliminate the different like garbage of our respiratory system and allows to inhale and exhale well. In this part, we have like the nasopharynx is also lined with respiratory epithelium, and this region contains like immune structures that are the Waldeger's ring, like a ring of our hand. That includes the pharyngeal tonsil adenosis, that is the purple one. Then we have the palatine tonsils, the lingual tonsils, and the tubal tonsils. Uh, these tissues help the immune system to detect like the flight pathogens are the and entering through the respiratory tract and also to eliminate this. In this part of the relationship with the lungs, pleura, trachea, and esophagus, we have like the little muscles around the nasopharynx that helps to shallowing and regulate like the auditory tube. Then the first one is the tensor that is located in the video in the right side. The tensor belly palatine opens the auditory tube and also helps to equalize like the pressure in the middle ear. Then we have the elevator belly palatini that elevates the soft the palate during the shallowing. Is during the swallowing preventing food from entering the nasal cavity. And then we have like the heart, lungs, trachea, esophagus, and also share the like the same anatomical neighborhood or space, which is with diseases is one can manifest with the others. And here we have like an example of the most common disease of this part. This is like the common condition affecting like the region of the is the sinusitis, which is inflammation of the paranasal sinuses that is located in and are located in this part, and this part. I like a cavities with a lot of air or space, like a pneumatic. So it occurs when the sinuses openings and become blocked with mucus cannot with the mucus, and also it cannot drain properly because have a little lesion or a different part in our cavity. So the common causes include the viral infections like a cold, bacterial infections, allergies, nasal polyps, or structural obstructions like mucus. The symptoms may include like the nasal congestion, facial pain or pressure in headache, also thick nasal discharge, discharge and reduce like the sense of smell, and causes a lot of fever in some cases. So the treatment also depends of the causes. So the viral sinusitis usually is improved with rest, hydration, and the descongestants that are normally in a pharmacy, while bacterial infections may require also antibiotics, and several chronic cases need usual corticoid steroids and also surgery, because are like an a chronic inflammation that contributes to generate like a neoplastic part. So it's important to control these symptoms because can search like a polyps or different structures, new structures in this part, and uh, then contributes to a good to have a good life. So this is important to this. And like a conclusion, we have to say that the nasal cavity is like a complex and an essential part of our body, because it controls the respiratory systems in all the different aspects. So it includes several bones, mucosas, nasal conchae, and also connections with the paranasal sinuses and nasopharynx that is also of the digestive system. This structure is like a filter worm humidify the air, and also contributes to the sense of smell that is so important to know also the different substances that are located in our feet. So this is important because support the immune defense and our security of the different aspects of our life. So thank you for see this video, and take care of you, and thank you for see. My name is Aridaza, and see you later.